The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with noise and anger. 12 different alien species sat in their floating seats, all talking at once. Their voices mixed together like thunder in a storm. At the center of it all, 3 humans sat quietly, waiting for their fate to be decided. Captain Lee Dae-ho kept his face calm, but his hands were tight on his chair. He had fought in many battles, but this felt different. This was not a fight he could win with weapons or tactics. This was politics, and humans were still new to this game. Next to him, Dr. Kim So-ra looked through her notes one last time. She had spent weeks preparing facts and numbers to show how much humans had helped the galaxy, but she could see in the aliens' eyes that facts would not matter today. Fear was stronger than truth. Ambassador Park Ji-woo stood up slowly. The noise in the hall got quieter as all eyes turned to him. He was the chief human representative, the one who spoke for all of humanity in this place. His job was to keep humans safe and welcome in galactic society. Today he was failing. Honored council members, Park began, his voice steady and clear. We have been part of this community for 50 years. In that time, humans have brought new ideas, new solutions, and new hope to many worlds. A loud hiss came from the Vorthak Empire's seat. The large-scaled alien stood up, his red eyes glowing with anger. New ideas? You call your chaos ideas?
You expand too fast.
You make alliances with species we have ignored for good reasons. You fight wars in ways that shock even your enemies. Captain Lee wanted to speak, but Park held up a small hand to stop him. The ambassador knew this was his moment to save humanity's place in the galaxy. Yes, we expand quickly, Park said, but we also build quickly. Our colonies become trading centers that help everyone. Yes, we make friends with smaller species, but that brings peace to regions that have known only conflict for centuries. And yes, our military tactics are different, but they work and they save lives. The crystalline Zilani representative spoke next, her voice like music made of ice. Your differences are the problem, humans. You do not follow the old ways. You do not respect the systems that have kept peace for thousands of years. You bring change, and change brings chaos. Dr. So-ra finally stood up, her scientific mind unable to stay quiet. Change also brings progress. When we arrived, the Corvin plague was killing millions across 3 systems. Our scientists found a cure in months, not years. When the trade wars started in the Outer Rim, our negotiators brought peace in weeks. Enough! The Vorthak's voice boomed through the hall. You list your victories, but what about your failures? What about the species that fear you? What about the old ways you have destroyed? Ambassador Park felt the weight of his people's future on his shoulders. He looked around the hall, counting allies and enemies. The math was not good. Too many species feared humans, and fear made them vote for simple solutions. Fear is not a good teacher, Park said quietly. 50 years ago, each of you was afraid when you first met other species. But you learned to work together. You built this council. You made laws that helped everyone. We ask only for the same chance you gave each other. But the Zilani was already speaking again. You ask for time, but you have had time. 50 years, and still you cannot follow simple rules. Still you surprise us with actions we do not understand. How can we trust beings who think so differently from us? Captain Lee could not stay silent anymore. He stood up, his military uniform neat and perfect, his medals catching the light. You want us to be predictable? You want us to follow your rules without question? Then you do not want allies. You want servants. The hall erupted in noise again. Some aliens shouted in anger, others whispered in fear. The captain's words had touched something deep and uncomfortable. The truth that many of them did want humans to be servants, not equals. Through the chaos, the council leader called for order. She was from the ancient Eternals, a species so old that they remembered when most of the others were still learning to make fire. Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. The vote will now take place, she announced. All in favor of maintaining human membership in the Galactic Council? 3 lights appeared. The Narians, who traded with humans regularly. The Kithara, whose insect colonies had been saved by human medicine. And surprisingly, one of the smaller Eternal factions. All in favor of human banishment from Council territories. 9 lights blazed in the darkness. The Vorthak Empire, the main Zilani houses, the proud hegemony, the Merchant Confederacy, and others. The vote was clear and brutal. Ambassador Park felt something break inside him, but his voice remained steady. How long do we have? 6 months, the council leader said, and there might have been sadness in her ancient voice. All human colonies in council space must be abandoned. All trade agreements will be cancelled. All diplomatic relations will end. You will return to your home system and stay there. Dr. Sora was gathering her papers, but her hands were shaking. 50 years of work, of building bridges between species, of solving problems together. All of it was ending because humans were different. Captain Lee stepped forward, his eyes moving from one alien representative to another. These beings who had just voted to throw away humanity's help, who had chosen fear over cooperation, who had picked the easy path over the right path. "You think you are making yourselves safe," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the Great Hall. "You think that by removing us you remove the chaos we bring. But chaos is not always your enemy. Sometimes chaos is what saves you when order fails." He paused, looking directly at the Vorthak representative. "You call our ways barbaric, but barbaric tactics win wars that civilized ones cannot. You fear our unpredictability, but unpredictable solutions solve problems that predictable ones cannot." The captain's voice got harder, more serious. "We came to you as friends. We offered our help, our ideas, our strength. You are sending us away as enemies, but we will not be your enemies. We will be something worse for you." "What is that?" the Zelani asked, her musical voice now worried. Captain Lee smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "We will be the help you threw away. And when the darkness comes, and it always comes, you will remember this day. You will remember what you chose to lose." The three humans walked out of the Great Hall together, their footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Behind them, the aliens sat in their floating seats, some satisfied with their vote, others already wondering if they had made a terrible mistake. In the following weeks, human ships began leaving Council space. Colonies that had stood for decades were packed up and abandoned. Trade routes that had made both sides rich were closed. Scientists who had worked together for years said goodbye, knowing they might never meet again. Some of the smaller species watched the human exodus with sadness. The Cathera sent secret messages promising to remember human kindness. The Nerians offered to hide human ships if they ever needed safe harbor. But these were quiet gestures hidden from the Council's eyes. As the last human transport ship left the outer boundary of Council space, Captain Lee stood on its bridge looking back at the galaxy that had rejected them. Beside him, Ambassador Park was already making plans for humanity's future in exile. Dr. Sora was working on new projects, her brilliant mind already adapting to their new reality. "Where do we go now?" Park asked. Lee pointed toward the dark space beyond the galactic rim, where no Council species had ever bothered to explore. "Out there, we go where no one else wants to go, and we become what no one else expects us to become." The ship turned away from the lights of civilization and headed into the unknown darkness, carrying humanity toward a future that would be entirely their own making. 5 years had passed since the Great Banishment, and humanity had not simply survived in the outer darkness, they had grown stronger. The independent Human Federation now controlled dozens of star systems that the Council had never bothered to explore. What the aliens had seen as empty, worthless space, humans had turned into thriving worlds. Admiral Cho Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the battleship New Seoul, watching construction crews finish the latest defense station. He had once worn the blue uniform of Council liaison forces, speaking for human interests in alien halls. Now he wore pure black, the color of humanity's new independence, and commanded fleets that answered to no one but their own people. "Sir, the morning reports," his aide said, handing him a data pad. Cho read through the numbers with satisfaction. Food production was up 15% on the agricultural worlds. The mining colonies had exceeded their quotas again. Most importantly, the shipyards were ahead of schedule on the new fleet construction. "Any word from the scouting missions?" Cho asked. "Commander Kang is due back from the deep survey today. Her ships have been gone for 3 months this time." Cho nodded. The exploration fleets had become humanity's eyes and ears, pushing further into unknown space than anyone had ever gone. They were mapping new worlds, finding new resources, and unfortunately, finding other things too. On the engineering deck of the orbital factory above New Terra, Yoon Mi-jin was putting the finishing touches on her latest creation. The small device in her hands looked simple, but it represented 5 years of desperate innovation. Without access to Council technology and trade networks, humans had been forced to invent everything from scratch. "Will it work?" asked her assistant, watching nervously as Mi-jin connected the final power cell. "It has to work," she replied, activating the device. The air around them shimmered, and suddenly both humans disappeared from sight. The personal stealth generator held for 30 seconds before flickering off. Still needs work on the power consumption, but it's progress. Mi-Jin had been one of hundreds of engineers tasked with creating new defensive technologies. The Council had cut humans off from their advanced weapons, their faster-than-light communication networks, and their jump gate system. So humanity had built their own, and in many ways they were better than what they had lost. The human FTL drives were slower than Council jump gates, but they could go anywhere without needing fixed stations. Human weapons were less precise than alien energy beams, but they were more adaptable and harder to defend against. Human ships were smaller than the Great Council dreadnoughts, but they were faster and could operate independently for months. In the intelligence center of the Federation capital, Dr. Kim Sora was studying reports that made her stomach feel cold with worry. She had left the Council's diplomatic service, but she had not stopped watching what happened in the galaxy. Her network of contacts, both human and alien, kept sending her information. Most of it was normal: trade disputes, political arguments, minor conflicts. But some of it was very strange. "Show me the missing ship reports again," she told her computer. The holographic display filled with red dots, each one representing a vessel that had simply vanished. Exploration ships, cargo haulers, even some military patrols. They went to investigate something in deep space and never came back. The Council authorities were calling it pirates or technical failures, but Sora saw a pattern they were missing. All the disappearances happened in the same region of space. All of them were investigating the same type of energy readings, and all of them had one thing in common. They had found something that was not supposed to be there. Sora tried to send warnings to her old colleagues in Council space, but her messages were blocked by official policy. Exiled humans were not allowed to contact Council citizens. She tried using unofficial channels, but most of her former friends were too afraid to respond. The Council had made it clear that helping humans could result in punishment. Meanwhile, in the deep black between stars, Commander Kang Tae-young was seeing things that would have terrified the comfortable bureaucrats of the Council. Her exploration ship, the Far Horizon, had been investigating energy signatures that their long-range sensors had detected months ago. "Commander, you need to see this," her science officer called out, his voice tight with worry. Kang moved to the sensor station and looked at the readings. In front of them, barely visible against the darkness of space, was a structure. It was huge, easily the size of a small moon and clearly artificial, but it was not made by any species that the galaxy knew about. "How old is it?" Kang asked. "The metal analysis suggests millions of years at least. Maybe much older, but Commander, that's not the strangest part." The science officer pointed to another set of readings. "It's not dead. There's power running through parts of it. Minimal, but definitely active." Kang felt a chill run down her spine. Something millions of years old sitting in empty space, still powered and waiting. Waiting for what? "Launch a probe," she ordered. "I want detailed scans of that thing. But keep us at maximum sensor range. If that structure so much as flickers in our direction, we run." The probe approached the ancient structure slowly, sending back information that made less sense with each passing minute. The hull was made of materials that their computers could not identify. The energy patterns were unlike anything in the database. Most disturbing of all, there were signs that the structure was not alone. Their sensors were detecting similar signatures scattered across this region of space, all dormant, all waiting. Back in Council space, the comfortable routine of galactic civilization continued. The Vorthek Empire celebrated another successful trade quarter. The Zelani houses competed in their traditional crystal singing festivals. The various species went about their lives, confident that the Council's ancient systems would keep them safe from any danger. But on the edges of their territory, ship captains were reporting strange dreams, nightmares of dark pyramids and mechanical voices speaking in languages that had been dead for eons. Most of them dismissed these as stress or space fatigue. Space could play tricks on the mind during long journeys. The Council's intelligence services received reports of the missing ships, but they filed them under routine hazards. Space was dangerous, everyone knew that. Ships were lost to pirates, asteroid storms, engine failures, and hundreds of other causes. There was no reason to think that a few dozen missing vessels meant anything significant. Admiral Cho was reviewing these same reports in his office on New Seoul, but with very different eyes. He had spent years learning to think like a military commander rather than a diplomat, and he saw patterns that others missed. They are not random, he told his staff during the morning briefing. Look at the timeline. The disappearances are accelerating. 6 months ago, it was 1 ship per month. Now it's 1 per week. Could it be some kind of natural phenomenon? Asked his intelligence chief. Natural phenomena don't usually increase in frequency like this, Cho replied. And they don't usually target only ships that are investigating energy anomalies. He stood up and walked to the star map that covered one wall of his office. Red pins marked the location of every human colony, every defense station, every ship in the fleet. It looked impressive, but Cho knew it was still a tiny fraction of what the Council could field if they wanted to. Double the patrols in the outer systems, he ordered, and I want our deep space monitoring stations put on high alert. If something is moving around in the dark between galaxies, I want to know about it before it knows about us. Engineer Yoon Mi-jin was working late again, trying to solve the power problems with her stealth generator. The device could hide a person or even a small ship for short periods, but it needed too much energy for practical use. She was running calculations when her computer chimed with an urgent message. It was from Commander Kang's exploration ship, and it contained sensor data that made Mi-jin's hands shake as she read it. Ancient structures, unknown technology, power signatures that suggested something vast and dormant was scattered through the empty regions of space. But what frightened her most was the engineering analysis. Whatever had built those structures had technology that was far beyond anything the current galaxy possessed. The power systems alone were beyond human understanding, and the materials were impossible to create. With any known methods, Mi-jin saved all the data to a secure drive and sent copies to Admiral Cho and Dr. Sora. If something ancient and powerful was stirring in the darkness, humanity needed to be ready. They had been cast out by the Council, but they would not be caught unprepared by whatever was coming. In her own research facility, Dr. Sora received Mi-jin's data package and combined it with her own intelligence reports. The pattern was becoming clear and terrifying. Something had been sleeping in the empty spaces of the galaxy for millions of years, and now it was waking up. She tried once more to send warnings to the Council, using every back channel and secret contact she still had. A few messages got through, but they were dismissed as human attempts to cause panic or gain sympathy for readmission to galactic society. The Council had made their decision about humanity, and they were not interested in listening to warnings from the exiles they had created. The attack came without warning, just as Dr. Sora had feared it would. 3 Council border systems simply went silent in the space of a single day. No distress calls, no emergency broadcasts. Just sudden, complete silence where once there had been millions of voices. General Lim Si-jin was reviewing patrol reports when the emergency alert reached his desk. He had been promoted from colonel after Admiral Cho moved to Fleet Command, and now he was responsible for all human ground forces. The report made his blood run cold. Sir, we're receiving fragmentary transmissions from Council space, his communications officer reported, her face pale with shock. 3 entire star systems have gone dark. The Council is sending rescue fleets to investigate. Lim stood up quickly, his mind already working through the implications. 3 systems was not pirates or natural disasters. This was something much worse, something that Dr. Sora had been warning about for months. Get me Admiral Cho immediately, and send word to all our deep space monitoring stations. I want to know if anything is moving in our direction. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Cho was coordinating humanity's response to the crisis. The human fleet was much smaller than the Council forces, but it was mobile and well prepared. More importantly, it was commanded by people who had been expecting something like this to happen. Sir, the first Council rescue fleets have reached the dead systems, his intelligence chief reported. We're intercepting their communications. The signals that came through were broken and full of static, but the fear in the alien voices was clear. The rescue ships had found planets stripped bare of all life, their surfaces covered in strange geometric patterns. Massive structures hung in orbit around dead worlds, structures that hurt the mind to look at directly. Dr. Choi Sang-min was part of the human team monitoring these transmissions. He was a xenoarchaeologist, someone who studied the ruins of ancient alien civilizations. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for what the Council forces were describing. These structures, he told his colleagues, they're not just buildings. They're machines, massive machines designed to process organic matter on a planetary scale. The recordings that came through showed pyramidal structures kilometers tall, their surfaces covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. Energy beams stretched between them like a web of lightning, and at the center of each world sat something that the Council forces could barely describe, a presence that felt ancient and utterly hostile. Captain Nahaiwan received orders to take her stealth reconnaissance fleet into Council space for a closer look. Her ships were equipped with the latest human technology, including Engineer Yoon's improved stealth generators. If anyone could get close to these structures and return with useful information, it would be her crews. "Remember, we are observers only," she told her squadron commanders before they departed. "We go in quiet, we record everything we can, and we get out before anyone knows we were there. The Council may have banished us, but we're not going to let the galaxy burn while we watch." The stealth ships slipped across the old borders like shadows, moving through space lanes that the Council no longer properly patrolled. The massive rescue fleets were easy to avoid. Their commanders were focused on the horror they had found, not on watching for human ships that were not supposed to exist. Nee's flagship, the Silent Arrow, approached the first dead system carefully. Even through their stealth fields, the crew could feel something wrong about the place. Space itself seemed colder here, emptier, as if something had drained the life from the very vacuum between worlds. "Captain, we're getting readings from the planet's surface," her sensor officer reported, his voice barely a whisper. "The geometric patterns the Council described, they're not random. They're some kind of harvesting grid." Na studied the data carefully. The patterns covered entire continents, each line precisely placed to channel energy toward the massive structures. But energy from what? The answer came when they analyzed the atmospheric readings. Every trace of organic compounds had been removed from the air. Every plant, every animal, every microbe had been processed and converted into pure energy. "How many people lived on this world?" Na asked. 2 billion Vorthak, according to our old database. Na felt sick. 2 billion lives gone without a trace, converted into fuel for machines that were older than galactic civilization itself. And this was just the beginning. The stealth ships moved through the dead system, recording everything. The massive structures were not just processing facilities. They were factories. New machines were being assembled in their depths, smaller units that could be deployed to other worlds. The ancient intelligence behind all this was not just harvesting the current galaxy. It was preparing to expand its operations. Back in human space, the reports from Captain Na's mission were being analyzed by the Federation's best scientists and military minds. General Lim coordinated with Admiral Cho and the other commanders, trying to understand what humanity was facing. They called themselves the Harbingers, Dr. Choi explained to the assembled leadership. "Based on the transmissions we've intercepted, they're a machine civilization that dominated this galaxy millions of years ago. They went dormant, waiting for new organic life to evolve and spread across the stars." "Why wait?" Admiral Cho asked. "Why not just stay active and keep expanding?" "Because they need organic life as fuel," Choi replied grimly. "They're not just destroyers, they're farmers. They let civilizations grow and spread, then harvest them when the time is right. We've all been crops in their field, and now it's harvest time." The implications were staggering. Every species in the galaxy, including humanity, had evolved and developed under the silent watch of these ancient machines. The Harbingers had been patient, allowing their crops to mature, waiting for the perfect moment to begin their harvest. "How long do we have?" General Lim asked. "Based on their expansion rate, they'll control half the galaxy within 2 years, Dr. Choi estimated. After that, it becomes a matter of mopping up the remaining resistance." Admiral Cho studied the tactical displays showing Harbinger movements. Their technology was clearly superior to anything the current species possessed, but they were not invincible. They had weaknesses that could be exploited by someone who thought differently than their ancient programming expected. The Council fleets are being destroyed because they're trying to fight the Harbingers using traditional tactics, he observed. Formation battles, shield walls, direct confrontations. But these machines have had millions of years to develop counters to every conventional strategy. "What are you suggesting?" Lim asked. "I'm suggesting that we need to fight dirty. Guerrilla tactics, asymmetric warfare, hit-and-run strikes. Everything the Council said was barbaric and uncivilized about human military doctrine." Engineer Yoon Mi-jin was working around the clock with her teams, trying to develop weapons that could damage Harbinger technology. The enemy's adaptive shields could counter most conventional weapons within minutes of first contact, but they seem to have trouble with chaotic, unpredictable attacks. Their systems are too perfect, she explained to the Weapons Development Committee. They analyze threats logically and develop optimal countermeasures. But what if we don't give them logical threats to analyze? Her solution was typically human. Instead of trying to create better energy weapons, her teams developed projectile systems that fired random combinations of materials at random intervals. Explosive shells mixed with sensor decoys, followed by electromagnetic pulses, followed by kinetic penetrators made from scrap metal. The Harbinger's perfect logic systems couldn't adapt to attacks that had no logical pattern. Meanwhile, the conquest of Council space continued at a terrifying pace. The proud Vorthak Empire crumbled as their homeworld was converted into another processing facility. The crystalline Zilani watched in horror as their ancient crystal cities were harvested for their unique resonance properties. Refugee fleets fled toward the galactic rim, carrying survivors from dozens of worlds. Some of these refugee ships crossed into human space, their crews desperate for any safe harbor. The Federation leadership debated what to do. These were the same aliens who had voted for human banishment just years before. They threw us out, some human leaders argued. Let them face the consequences of their choices. But Dr. Sora and others argued for a different approach. This is bigger than our grudges, she told the Federation Council. If the Harbingers win, they'll come for us eventually too. We're all in this together now, whether we like it or not. The decision was made to accept refugees, but with conditions. They would be housed in secure facilities and monitored carefully. Some of them might have useful information about Harbinger tactics and technology. Others might be able to contribute to the growing resistance movement. Captain Na's stealth ships continued their dangerous reconnaissance missions, gathering intelligence from deep inside Harbinger-controlled space. What they found was increasingly disturbing. The ancient machines were not just harvesting worlds. They were also awakening more of their kind from dormancy sites scattered across the galaxy. There are hundreds of them, Na reported during a secure briefing, maybe thousands. The alien ships appeared at the edge of human space without warning, but they were not Harbingers. These vessels flew the diplomatic flags of species that had once voted for humanity's banishment. Now they came as beggars, carrying messages that their proud leaders had never thought they would need to send. President Shin A-young sat in the Federation's Emergency Council chamber, reading the formal requests for aid that had arrived in the past week. The language was careful and diplomatic, but the desperation beneath the polite words was impossible to hide. The Vorthak Empire requests immediate military assistance against hostile forces, she read aloud to the assembled human leaders. They offer full recognition of human territorial claims and normalized trade relations in exchange for aid. Vice Admiral Kim Dong-wook, who had replaced Admiral Cho as fleet commander, made a sound of disgust. 6 months ago they called us barbaric warmongers. Now they want our barbaric warmongers to save them. The next message was from the Zilani houses, their crystal song communications translated into human language. We humbly request the wisdom and assistance of humanity in our darkest hour. We offer technological exchange and cultural cooperation. President Shin set down the datapad and looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leadership. These were people who had been forced into exile, who had watched their colonies abandoned and their diplomatic work destroyed. The temptation for revenge was strong, but she knew they faced a choice that was bigger than their personal grievances. Dr. Lee, what's your analysis of the Harbinger threat? She asked. Dr. Lee Eun-jung had become humanity's leading expert on Harbinger technology by studying the intelligence gathered from Captain Na's reconnaissance missions. Her findings were not encouraging. The Harbingers are not just harvesting organic life, she explained. They're also processing the technological infrastructure of each conquered system. Every ship, every space station, every piece of advanced equipment is being converted into materials for their expansion. She activated a holographic display showing the Harbinger advance. Red zones marked conquered systems, yellow zones showed areas under attack, and green zones represented the rapidly shrinking area of free space. At their current rate of expansion, they will control 80% of the galaxy within 18 months. After that, The remaining species will not have enough industrial capacity to mount any meaningful resistance. Vice Admiral Kim studied the tactical situation with professional interest. What about their weaknesses? Our stealth attacks have been successful on a small scale. Yes, but only because we're operating from outside their main focus, Dr. Lee replied. They're primarily concerned with harvesting the high-population core worlds. Once they finish that process, they'll turn their attention to the rim territories. When that happens, our current advantages won't be enough. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. Humanity had survived banishment by adapting and innovating, but they were still vastly outnumbered by an enemy with millions of years of technological development. President Shin made her decision with the weight of human survival on her shoulders. Schedule meetings with the alien representatives. We'll hear what they have to offer. The first delegation to arrive was from the Vorthak Empire, or what remained of it. Ambassador Kurthak had once been a proud representative of galactic civilization's greatest military power. Now he stood before human leaders as a refugee, his scaled hide scarred and his eyes filled with the horror of what he had witnessed. Honored President, he began, using the respectful address that he had refused to give humans years before. My people face extinction. The machines have taken our homeworld, our colonies, our fleets. Billions of our citizens have been processed into energy to fuel their expansion. President Shin listened carefully, noting how the ambassador's language had changed. Gone was the arrogant dismissal of human capabilities. In its place was desperate respect born from necessity. What exactly are you asking from us? She inquired. Military alliance, Kurthak replied immediately. Our remaining forces will serve under human command. We offer our industrial capacity, our scientific knowledge, and our loyalty in exchange for survival. Vice Admiral Kim leaned forward. 5 years ago, your empire voted to banish us because our military tactics were too brutal and unpredictable. Now you want us to command your forces using those same tactics? The Vorthak ambassador's shame was visible, but he did not deny the truth. We were wrong. Our traditional methods have failed completely against this enemy. Your unconventional approaches may be our only hope. The next delegation was from the Zilani, their crystalline forms dimmed with grief and fear. They had once criticized humans for being too chaotic and unpredictable. Now they were begging for that very chaos to save them. Our crystal cities have been harvested. Their speakers sang in harmonics that conveyed deep sorrow. The resonance patterns that took millennia to develop have been stripped away in days. We offer our remaining technological knowledge, our understanding of energy harmonics, and our complete submission to human authority. Dr. Lee found herself in the strange position of negotiating with species that had once dismissed her research as primitive. Now they were offering to share their most closely guarded secrets in exchange for human protection. The Zilani harmonic crystals could enhance our stealth technology significantly, she told President Shin during a private briefing. Their energy manipulation techniques are centuries ahead of ours in some areas. And the Vorthak industrial capacity? Their remaining shipyards could triple our fleet production rate, assuming we can protect them from Harbinger attacks. The hardest delegation to face was from the Eternals, the ancient species that had founded the Galactic Council. Their representative was Elder Velthar, who had personally cast one of the votes for human banishment. We have made a grave error, the Elder admitted, her ancient voice heavy with regret. In our arrogance, we believed that order and tradition would always triumph over chaos and change. We were wrong, and now all of galactic civilization pays the price for our mistake. President Shin felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. The vindication she had dreamed of was finally here, but it came at the cost of billions of lives across the galaxy. What are you offering? She asked. Everything, Velthar replied simply. The complete archives of galactic history, including records of the first Harbinger War from millions of years ago. Manufacturing techniques that we have guarded for millennia. Most importantly, we offer you legitimate authority to command all remaining council forces. The room was quiet as the implications sank in. The species that had banished humanity was now offering to make humans the leaders of galactic civilization. But the most surprising delegation came from an unexpected source: the Cathara and Nereans, the minor species that had quietly supported humans during the original banishment vote. We never forgot your kindness, the Cathara queen chittered through her translator. When the great species abandoned you, we remembered how you saved our colonies from plague. Now we offer our swarms to your cause. The Nerian ambassador was equally direct. Our aquatic worlds have been harder for the Harbingers to process quickly. We offer them as bases for your operations and our deep-sea facilities for ship construction. President Shin spent days in closed sessions with her advisors, weighing the offers and demands. The mathematics were clear. Humanity alone could not defeat the Harbingers. But with the combined resources of the remaining council species, they might have a chance. There will be conditions, she finally announced to the assembled alien delegates. Full recognition of human territorial sovereignty. Complete tactical command of all joint operations. And most importantly, this alliance continues after the Harbinger threat is ended, assuming we survive. The aliens agreed to everything without argument. They had no choice, and everyone knew it. Vice Admiral Kim began the massive task of reorganizing the combined fleet. Ships from dozens of different species had to be integrated into a coherent fighting force. It was like conducting an orchestra where each section played in a different key and tempo. The Vorthak crews are excellent in formation fighting, but they can't adapt quickly when plans change, he reported to his staff. The Zilani ships have superior sensors, but their crews are too hesitant to take aggressive action. What about the smaller species? His tactical officer asked. The Cathera swarm tactics are actually very effective against Harbinger units. Their insect mindset makes them naturally unpredictable. The Nerians are providing underwater assembly, facilities that the Harbingers haven't figured out how to attack yet. Dr. Lee was working with alien scientists who had once looked down on human research methods. Now they were eagerly learning about humanity's chaotic but effective approach to problem solving. The key insight, she explained to a mixed group of researchers, is that the Harbingers are perfect logical systems. They analyze threats, determine optimal responses, and implement them flawlessly. But perfection becomes a weakness when facing truly random inputs. Engineer Yoon Mi-jin found herself in charge of a technological development program that spanned dozens of species. The final battle was not fought in the comfortable systems where galactic civilization had flourished for millennia. Instead, it took place at the very heart of the galaxy, where ancient darkness had hidden the Harbinger's greatest secret, the Prime Constructor. Fleet Admiral Park Jun-ho stood on the bridge of the flagship Unity, watching the massive combined fleet prepare for humanity's most desperate gamble. Ships from every surviving species hung in formation around the human command vessel, their crews united by necessity and led by the very people they had once cast out. "Sir, long-range sensors are detecting the target," his sensor officer reported. The readings that appeared on the main screen made everyone on the bridge fall silent with awe and terror. The Prime Constructor was the size of a small moon, its surface covered in geometric patterns that hurt the mind to look at directly. Energy streams flowed between massive spires, and smaller Harbinger vessels swarmed around it like insects protecting their hive. This was the machine that could convert entire star systems, the heart of the ancient enemy's power. "All ships, this is Admiral Park," he announced over the fleet communication system. "You know what we're fighting for today. Not just our species, but all life in the galaxy. The Harbingers see us as crops to be harvested. Today we show them that crops can fight back." Colonel Bae In-ho was preparing his assault marines for what everyone knew would be a suicide mission. His teams were a mix of humans and aliens, soldiers who had trained together for months to learn each other's strengths and weaknesses. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy this thing from the outside," he told his troops. "We need to get inside and plant the virus package at the central processing core. The fleet will keep the Harbingers busy while we do the real work." The virus package was the work of Chief Engineer Ju Ye-jin, humanity's answer to millions of years of Harbinger technological superiority. It was not designed to attack their systems directly. That had proven impossible. Instead, it would flood their networks with pure, meaningless chaos. The Harbingers process information perfectly, Ju had explained to the mission planners. Every byte of data is analyzed, categorized, and used. But what happens when they receive data that has no meaning, no pattern, no purpose? What happens when a perfect system tries to process perfect randomness? The inspiration had come from human history, from studying how smaller forces had defeated technologically superior enemies throughout the centuries. Asymmetric warfare, where the weak used their advantages of mobility and unpredictability against the strong who relied on conventional tactics. The battle began with the humans doing what they did best, breaking all the rules. Instead of the traditional formation attacks that the Harbingers expected, the combined fleet split into dozens of smaller groups, each attacking from a different angle with different tactics. Vorthak heavy cruisers charged straight at Harbinger defenses, their crews finally free to use the aggressive tactics that human commanders encouraged. Zalani vessels wove between enemy fire, their crystal hulls resonating with harmonic frequencies that disrupted Harbinger sensors. The Cathara swarms were the most effective, their insect crews thinking in patterns that were so alien even to other organic species that the Harbinger's analysis systems couldn't predict their movements. Thousands of small fighters surrounded individual Harbinger vessels like angry bees, striking from every angle at once. "The enemy is adapting to our conventional attacks," reported Admiral Park's tactical officer, "but they're having trouble with the mixed formations." That had been the key insight that human tactical doctrine brought to the Alliance. Instead of having each species fight in their traditional style, they mixed ship types and crews, creating combinations that had never existed before. Harbinger computers that had analyzed galactic military doctrine for millions of years had no data on how a Vorthak captain would react when commanding a crew of Cathara fighters. Colonel Bay's assault ships broke through the Harbinger defenses in the confusion, their hulls scarred by energy weapons but still intact. The Marines had trained for this moment, learning to fight in the twisted geometry of Harbinger structures where normal tactics failed. "First squad, establish a perimeter," Bay ordered as his teams breached the prime constructor's hull. "Second squad, find us a path to the core. Third squad, watch our backs. This place is going to be full of defense systems we've never seen before. The interior of the prime constructor was like being inside a vast machine, designed by an intelligence that thought in ways no organic mind could follow. Corridors twisted in directions that seemed to fold back on themselves, and the walls pulsed with energy patterns that made the Marines feel sick to look at. But the assault teams had one advantage. They had trained together so extensively that they could operate by instinct even when their minds couldn't process what they were seeing. Human adaptability combined with alien specialized abilities, each species contributing what they did best to the common goal. Chief Engineer Ju was with the assault teams, carrying the virus package that represented humanity's last hope. She had spent months refining the program, testing it against every type of Harbinger system they had encountered. The central core should be about 2 kilometers deeper into the structure, she told Colonel Bay as they fought their way through automated defenses. But the path won't be direct. These machines don't build like organic species. Their architecture follows pure mathematical efficiency. The fighting was brutal and chaotic. Harbinger defense systems attacked with mechanical precision, but the mixed assault teams responded with the unpredictable creativity that had made humans unwelcome in the old council. When conventional tactics failed, they improvised. When weapons broke, they found new ways to fight. A Cathara warrior used her natural climbing ability to reach a Harbinger control node that human Marines couldn't access. A Zalani engineer combined her species' harmonic abilities with human demolition techniques to bring down a wall that was blocking their advance. Every meter of progress was paid for in blood and determination. Meanwhile, the space battle raged around the prime constructor. Fleet Admiral Park coordinated attacks from hundreds of ships, keeping the Harbingers too busy to focus on the small teams that had penetrated their greatest stronghold. "Sir, we're losing ships faster than we can replace them," his fleet coordinator reported. "The Harbingers are bringing more units online every minute." "Then we finish this quickly," Park replied. "All ships maximum assault formation. Draw every Harbinger unit into the fight. The assault teams need time to complete their mission." The combined fleet threw itself at the enemy with desperate courage, trading their lives for the minutes that the ground teams needed. Captains who had once been enemies now died fighting side by side, their crews united by humanity's refusal to surrender. Inside the prime constructor, Colonel Bay's teams finally reached the central processing core. It was a chamber so vast that they couldn't see the ceiling, filled with processing nodes that stretched away into the darkness like a mechanical forest. At the center, a pillar of pure energy reached from floor to ceiling, carrying the data streams that controlled all Harbinger operations. "This is it," Chief Engineer Ju said, setting up her equipment next to the energy pillar. Once I upload the virus, it will spread through every Harbinger system in the galaxy. But the process will take several minutes and they'll detect what we're doing almost immediately. How long do you need? Bay asked, checking his weapons. 5 minutes minimum, maybe 10 to be sure. Bay looked around at his surviving Marines, humans, Vorthak, Kithara, Zilani, and others, all united in this final moment. You heard her. We hold this position for 10 minutes no matter what comes through those corridors. The defense of the Central Core was the stuff of legends. Waves of Harbinger security systems attacked the small group of Marines, and they held their ground through sheer determination and the tactical flexibility that humanity had brought to the galaxy. When energy weapons overheated, they switched to kinetic projectiles. When those ran out, they used improvised explosives. When their technology failed, they used their bare hands and their refusal to give up. Chief Engineer Ju worked frantically at her equipment, uploading terabytes of pure randomness into the Harbinger network. Her virus was not elegant or sophisticated. It was the digital equivalent of human chaos, impossible to analyze or counter because it had no logic to understand. Upload complete, she finally announced. The virus is spreading through their network. The effects were immediate and devastating. All around them, the mechanical precision of the Harbinger systems began to break down. Status lights flickered randomly. Energy patterns collapsed into chaos, and the ancient machines that had operated flawlessly for millions of years began to fail. All assault teams,